So this is Artus von Frahm speaking. Welcome everybody to our first community Discord session. Really glad that you are all here and could make it. For us, it's a special moment, I think, to actually interact on this level with early community members in this way. So we really appreciate you being here, and also we hope that you can give us feedback on this event, but also more particularly on the release of our Framing App alpha release. This will be one point today. We're actually pretty excited that we're at this point where we can put the first iteration out of our Framing App, and hope that in a few weeks we can have an sort of official launch after we already got some feedback from alpha testers like yourself, who actually try to break this app. Before we go into the alpha release, I will give a general update on Frahm, on our background, and sort of what to expect in terms of upcoming products and services we are planning. And before that, I think we wanted to have a quick note that we're actually recording this session today, so we can share afterwards with community members who couldn't make the call. So just note that we are starting to record the session now. That being said, the agenda is more or less, I will walk through the presentation of our deck, give you a little bit of insights. Then I will give you a short intro into how we actually are building frames and into our sort of framing SDK, our framing tool, which we use, show some of the capabilities we already have and where we might go. And then finally give a walk through the framing app. And afterwards, at the end, we will have time for a short Q&A. So I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen? I guess that's a yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So we are Frahm, obviously you know that, and what we are doing is frames for the metaverse, and our mission is bringing craftsmanship to NFT frames. I like to start with our team because I think we have a very special and very strong team, and also a team which can deliver sort of on that vision and products we present to you in this session. So we have our own artist, a generative artist, who has done some drops before. We will reveal his identity soon, probably next week, when we have the Genesis drop website actually live. So this will not be the Genesis drop itself, but actually more information of what's to come. And then we will officially introduce him or her. You might seen him or her around already if you paid attention. Another team member of us is Athena van Frahm. Actually, I know her well. She's my wife. She has a PhD in history of art and owns a actual gallery. And that's sort of also how the story of Frahm was initially born. We were looking at how to display NFTs in her gallery, actually the physical gallery. So at the beginning, we were exploring physical NFT frames and went in that direction and really started looking at requirements. What do you need to do? What kind of screens can you use? How do you have sort of that Web3 plugin in there with wallet? You need to have their own app inside. But eventually we came to that point where we said, why can't frames be purely digital and NFTs themselves? There seems to be a big and growing market with these virtual galleries we're seeing. And actually when you are paying attention to what's happening, what we are doing, you see more and more of these metaverse spaces and metaverse galleries pop up. And this is where we see a strong demand in the future, actually for what we are building. Obviously, this market doesn't exist yet. We're sort of pioneering it. That's also what is exciting on the one hand, but also a challenge on the other hand. So then we have me, Artus. I'm currently also the project lead of what we're doing. I've been in the blockchain space since 2016, founded some startups and also a blockchain nonprofit organization where we sort of propagate blockchain, crypto as a nonprofit to more local governments and some companies around the region. So I myself am from Germany. And we have Dali Frahm. He's actually one of the founders behind a DeFi protocol. We have Marco von Frahm, who's responsible for business development. He's an NFT expert and works in one of the more well-known metaverse accelerator in the NFT space. Bironimos von Frahm, him and myself go way back. He was actually also one of the co-founders of that blockchain non-profit organization. He's a full stack developer, and already in 2016 actually he has given courses in Solidity programming, how to set up oracles and all that. So we're very thrilled also to have him on board. We have Niels van Fraam, he's our venture lead. Then we have Hans van Fraam. He has his own UX studio based in Berlin. I think he's halfway doxed himself already. So maybe at this point, I think it's important to note that some of us are more pseudonym than others. So we are not trying to remain completely anonymous. I think sooner or later we will reveal some or most of the identities, as mentioned next week or the coming weeks. Our generative artist will also be revealed, and over the course of time also probably some other team members. Then we have Luther de Frahm. He goes way back on the SEO side and is sort of in marketing and growth hacking, taking care of that side. And then Grady Frahm, who set up this event, our community manager, also very versatile in sort of that performance marketing. And I took the time to go through our team because we think we have a pretty good team here with very versatile capabilities to actually build most of what we plan out of our own hand without actually working with other agencies together. Looking at sort of the market need, where are we coming from? I initially sort of mentioned the story behind it, but what we see is that frames are intrinsic to art, but not in the metaverse yet. And you can see it both in virtual displays of NFTs, but also in physical displays of NFTs. And we think our frame NFTs, digital frames, tokenized as NFTs, will have a role to play and an appeal in both these digital exhibitions in the physical world, but also for the display of NFTs in the virtual world in galleries like OnCyber, Gallery SO, and the many others which are in development right now. And we always like to point to that quote from Vincent van Gogh: "A picture without a frame is like a soul without a body," which really captures as well that frames just go hand in hand with the display for art. And this will be a thing in the metaverse as well. We're sure about it. And also when you look sort of at the history of frames, what you see sort of little snapshot here at the bottom right is that with each sort of epoch in the history of art, there also had there also took place a certain development with the frames itself, which kind of reflected the influences of the time, sort of what went on in terms of the actual art in that time, but also it reflects the capabilities artists had to actually craft these kind of frames in a certain way. And now with Web3, the metaverse, crypto, and NFTs, we have also generative art. There's new capabilities, sort of a new context also, how to actually interpret what is a frame and how can a frame look and how you actually can use a frame. And that's basically where we want to come in with our solution, because we say that frames will enhance art, and we want to bring this to collectors, creators, and galleries in the digital or in the NFT space. And when you really look around and you see how the NFT art space is exploding, we see pieces trading or being valued in the millions, in the 100,000s, fidenzas, wiggles, apes, autoglyph, whatever. And you see that there's a lot of collectors investing a lot of capital in this art because they value it, and at the same time they also expect to have sort of a space which reflects that kind of value to it. That's why we think, or what we want to do, is actually give these collectors the frames their art deserves, also in the metaverse, to actually reflect sort of the brilliance of the art with a proper frame, which is also to be regarded as a piece of art in its own right. And this is why we have the vision that NFTs in the metaverse will be framed. And we also see that basically everything in the future will be tokenized in the metaverse. So you see it already in these virtual worlds like Sandbox, Decentraland, but also when you look at what's happening in OnCyber, is that every aspect of what you hear even, and also what you see, will be tokenized and will be a piece of digital property, a piece of digital value. And we think that frames will also be a piece of digital value tokenized on the respective blockchain. And this is just a little image here you see where we put one of the frames around a ringer, where I think it's clear that the appeal actually increases by having a frame sort of enhancing and playing also with the composition of the actual piece of art. Now, we have basically quite early realized that if we want to make frames happen and make frames a thing in the NFT space, it will be not enough to just create some frames and put it out there. But actually, we need to create a own sort of frame stack, an own ecosystem to actually start propagating this concept and making it happen or on different ends. So I will quickly go through each of these items and what's sort of behind it. So we have the Frahm Genesis drop. This will be our first drop where minting of frame NFTs will be available to the public. And the Genesis drop is special on the one hand because it will be the first Frahm NFT series available for minting, but also it will be special because these frames will be based on generative art. As mentioned before, we have our own generative art artist in-house, and what this means is actually that he or she is training a tool, an algorithm, basically you can call it an autonomous system, which at the end by itself will create a set of unique frames, each one unique sort of in its own, based on the inputs and on the rules we put into this algorithm. And basically the algorithm will make use of the Frame SDK, which will I also showcase in a couple of minutes, to create these kind of frames. And this is what really makes the Genesis drop special, and for us it is important to also enter the market with an exciting lineup or an exciting frame collection, which has kind of its own story, its own history, and is more than just really what you see when you know how actually it is created and how much brain power, engineering, designing efforts actually go into this. So we've been working on this already since a couple of months and making good progress. I think you all seen the frames we put out also in the sort of community art channel where you can request NFTs to be framed. This is basically us playing around with our tool to get feedback basically on the frames, discover for ourselves also what is still missing, how can we improve that tool and improve its capabilities to actually derive at the point where we are happy to launch the first frames for the Genesis drop. So as mentioned at the beginning, we will have the website for the Genesis drop with more information probably up and running sometime in the next 1 or 2 weeks. Then we have a series called Frahm Exclusives. What this means is that we are collaborating with different stakeholders in the NFT, but also in the traditional art space to showcase the concept of frames and how they can enhance NFT art in different ways. And for this purpose, we have we are creating an own series, an own smart contract to tokenize frames in the Frahm exclusive series, where we collaborate, for example, with a gallery or with another set of stakeholder, a collector, to create a small series of custom frames to jointly promote this new concept of framing. As it is sort of not existing in the NFT space, I think we have a lot of work to do actually to work with different stakeholders to propagate this idea, to bring it out, to make it a thing. Then after the Genesis drops sometime, target is more or less Q2, is actually a framing as a service, which we want to launch and are planning to launch. Basically, this is a little bit to what we already do in a way with the community art channel, where people can come in and ask for an NFT to be framed, but actually have this as a service which is being charged for creating custom frames. Because when you look at it, really the frame itself, the most appeal, it can also have if it enhances actually the NFT and it is sort of designed in a custom way around it, is actually the best way to make a frame. This is why we want to create custom frames in the future as well. And we probably will also give the option to tokenize these on different blockchains, different L2s, so that actually customers who come in and have a request can have that tokenized on the chain they actually wish to have it tokenized. On the other hand, we're also looking at launching a what we are calling frame shop right now. Basically, when we put ourselves into the mind of a user of a gallery, and at this point I think it's important to mention that for us it is important that these frames will be available in galleries, virtual galleries like OnCyber, like Gallery SO and other ones. We're having discussions with a lot of them already. They like the concept and it's sort of in the pipeline collaborations. It will still take some time, and also we first of all need to also actually bring some frame NFTs into the market for it to be sort of useful in that respect. But if you put yourself into sort of the perfect way of how actually these frames would give the most utility, is if you in one of these galleries, you put your NFT to the wall, or you basically set up your gallery, and then you have an option to frame it right there at the spot. And ideally you have an option to kind of look through and explore different frames which already exist, and then can just purchase one directly off the market. And this is what we want to enable with the frame shop, where we actually have specific frames, different themes of frames available for a fixed price on the market, on OpenSea, maybe in our own shop, maybe in a gallery shop itself, for people to easily pick it up and frame the NFTs. Then what we are releasing today is our framing app. So the alpha release today, I think it's already quite well. You will see in a minute, but there's definitely some edge cases still left we need to take care of, and some bugs to fixes. And we hope that some of you will also be early alpha users and give feedback for that. I will showcase this in a second. And then we also have our own framing SDK. Is our tool which we use to actually create frames. And before I go into those two tools, I just quickly show you sort of our framework. We don't call it a roadmap, we call it a framework. It's also not sort of linear. We're working on several things simultaneously, but really what I mentioned before, the Genesis frame drop is planned for the end of Q1. We will announce these specific dates at that point in time soon. We're still sort of trying to figure it out based on when we're ready with everything we plan to launch together. The framing app alpha release is coming. We're working on platform integrations, as I mentioned before. Then we're setting sort of up with the other products. We're also talking to different stakeholders for some specific Frame NFT drops, which could be also exciting, but coming at a later point in time. The Frame SDK, sometime in the future, we might make this available as a service for creators to also leverage it and create their own frames. We have some discussions around physical digital exhibitions. That's what we showed at the beginning. Then also sort of on the horizon, this is no thing in sort of the immediate backlog, is what we call the Open Frame Registry. It will be sort of something like the ENS registrar, but for framing NFTs. Basically a public resource infrastructure different galleries or other spaces can access to actually get framed images of certain NFTs and have this as a sort of reference database, you could say. A frame marketplace, if frames take off, is also something we plan to have in the future. And if we actually accomplish what we sort of put out for, I think we have a lot of services and products which are useful. And eventually our goal is sort of to be Web3 native and decentralize also this platform we are creating in form of a DAO. Before we can do it though, we want to make sure we actually have something out there which is worth it to actually govern. So this is currently sort of the long-term vision. With that being said, now I would like to jump into give you a quick intro to our frame editor. So this is basically what our digital artists built from scratch, and we're all in the team happy to have it, and we're users or pretty strong users, every one of us itself, to actually play around with it. So here I just loaded an NFT image inside of it. I have different options even for the background, for the lights of the NFT. But now I can start building layers, basically frame layers around it. So I just added a layer. I can play around with the thickness of the frame. I can play around with sort of the depth of a frame. Then I have different options. One of the strongest options is actually using materials. So we have our own database of different materials you can see here. So now this is sort of a gold material I chose. There's many different exciting ones, but I can also play around with the texture. So now I actually change the texture of this material to wood. We have a lot more textures also in the planning, and also a lot more of these materials basically. Same goes for different shapes of the actual frames. So we're creating our own shapes basically and making them available as different options. Now I can start actually stacking sort of frames into frames if I want to do it, and can play around in that kind of way, and can also create a bit more depth and a bit of other things. There's many more options. I will not go through all of that. We have options to also put in different sort of ornaments. There's much more planned, but these will be then also used to create much more fancy frames as well. So we're still also looking and discovering sort of the range of different frames we want to offer with the Genesis drop. As mentioned before, it will not be us actually doing what I just did and doing this manually. This will all be done by the algorithm, by the generative art algorithm basically, creating a set of unique frames which will be tokenized on the Ethereum blockchain and then being available for the minting event end of Q1. So that was the frame generator, and now to the actually alpha release of our frame app. So we will actually open a specific channel in our Discord for the alpha release of this app. Basically, it is available for everybody right now at try.frahm.art. You can go there and start playing around with it. And the purpose of the framing app is to give initial utility to the frames and framing NFTs, where we actually can control the user experience. As I mentioned before, our ultimate goal is to have integrations of these frames natively in every gallery, every meta space out there. This will take some time though, And while we are working on these integrations, we also working on having sort of the best user experience to frame something out sort of the Frahm ecosystem. In the future, this might also become available as an API or sort of mini app for other platforms to integrate and use. So they actually don't have to build this sort of framing integration themselves, but this is also a bit out. So what we have here is basically a set of different sample frames. So they're not actually tokenized. These are just also frames we put out there as a sample. So we have 3 square frames and 1 portrait and 1 landscape frame to actually fit a different variety of NFT aspect ratios. The thing about frames is that they need to be, when it comes to the aspect ratio, fitting to the actually NFT you're trying to fit. This is why we have different aspect ratios. There will be also more aspect ratios available. When you look at the frames, the sample frames here, we actually determined to have more sort of standard frames at this point and don't go with the fancy frames as samples for the alpha release, because we want the focus to be more on the actual user experience of the app itself and also testing functionality itself. So now I basically connected to my MetaMask wallet here, which is my hot wallet, and where I tokenize a lot of like samples, which is more or less to be ignored. But basically I'm connected. I see my NFTs here. Now I can choose an NFT. Actually, this is one I minted actually yesterday. So now I have a preview of actually my NFT in that frame. I have still the option to change the frame and choose the one I like. Here on the right side, I have the option to also play around with Passepartout. Passepartout is basically a layer between NFT and the frame, which gives it some space to breathe, sort of. In this case, the Passepartout is just plain white. There might be more options to color it in the future as well. We wanted to keep it simple for now. Now I can click on Frame it. Actually, this is the action to frame it. Now my MetaMask pops up with a message saying, to frame your NFT, please confirm ownership by signing with your wallet. This is free and will not create a transaction on Ethereum. So basically, what happens now when you frame your NFT is we are creating new high resolution 2D and 3D file types of the framed NFT. We're actually not interacting on the blockchain like smart contract level. At this point, we had lots of discussions if we want to do this or not. We basically decided against having any kind of on-chain breeding for framing an NFT at this point. On the one hand, it will create additional transaction costs. On the other hand, it might introduce smart contract risks. And as mentioned before, our sort of initial target group is really the high-end NFT art, and nobody wants to assume who owns a Fidenza, Punk, or even any other kind of NFTs, they value a smart contract risk and wants to wrap that token in there. Not saying this will not happen in the future, it might, but also when you look at all these galleries, actually most of it will happen on the user interface level. Anyways, we have sort of this confirmation where you just need to sign something with your wallet, where you basically say, yes, I own this frame, I own this NFT, I hereby sign this transaction. So you saw there's nothing actually happening on chain. And now you saw a little buggy, it took a bit of time to actually load it. But what just happened is that we basically loaded the framed NFT into our 3D model, which you basically can play around with and look at it in 3D. We think it's a pretty cool effect to see your own NFT sort of in this kind of way and discover it from different angles and actually see for yourself kind of how it adds appeal to it. So now we also give you options to actually copy and share that link. There's a direct sort of link to Twitter, which brings you to actually share this directly on Twitter if you like. We have an option to download a Twitter banner. We're still working on doing it. So this is the first one. Actually, there's sort of some random backgrounds behind it, which you can download. Seems like I just did the same one for this one. Yeah, there's a few different backgrounds, and we're still adding some of them. A lot of them with like in real life settings, and we also give you the option then to download actually the image of your frame piece, which you can also then download for yourself to have. And you can also go back and start framing other images. With that being said, that was a quick walkthrough through our alpha release. As mentioned, we would love for you guys to go and try it. And by this time, I'm not sure if Frahm actually already opened the channel. Anyways, anybody from the community who attended this event today will be able to fill out a specific form we share, and will have the option to be whitelisted for the Genesis drop. We want to reward early community participants in here. So we definitely want you guys to be on the whitelist. And above or beyond the whitelist, we're also looking at different other incentives we can provide to the community, and are happy to have you here. And I think at this point I stop sharing and open the Q&A session.
The channel is now public to all the participants of this event. The channel's name is Event Feedback, and you can see it right about the Frahm event voice channel. You'll basically see a Google form, and you'll need to fill out how the event was, how the alpha release was, and then you'll be able to put your wallet address for the whitelisting purposes. So we highly encourage you to try out the alpha release.
Thank you, Frahm. Maybe one additional note from myself regarding the sign up for the whitelist. When you fill out the form, we would like to actually see who already got whitelisted out of the community, and then you can provide your wallet address. Please note that it's always better to have sort of a new wallet which you put in there, which you use for the actually minting event, so you don't create a connection between your social profile and your on-chain activities. Obviously, if you are fine with that, that's okay as well. We just want to remind you to try to sort of keep a rather clean sort of on-chain social profile record. Yeah, so I think that was it sort of for my monologue. I hope you found interesting what we presented you in this session. As mentioned, feel free to try out the web app. Feel free also to have, if you have any questions, to bring your question up now or any time in the future in the Discord channel. All right, no questions so far, it seems. I'm sure once you start using the Framing app, you might have some questions. So feel free to interact with us. We are really happy and glad for initial feedback. Please try to break the alpha release app. That's the best way to actually to improve it. And we are planning for a public release of the app sometime beginning and middle of February, before the actual Genesis drop event, sort of to get the idea more out in public and have people play around with our app, try it, frame some of the NFTs, because we think to actually frame your NFT and see it in sort of the framed version, have the 3D model you can play around with, is really the best message we can send to bring out the idea, promote the concept. With that being said, I think we also already over the initial time we scheduled. So Drede Frahm, I think we can wrap it up for today. Thank you everybody for attending. As mentioned, we love to have you in the community and hope to hear more from you in the future. Thank you so much.